Welcome, everybody, to the Patrick and Mary Unstoppable Author Interview Series, where we interview authors, speakers, coaches, and football coaches from all over the world to help us get what we all want out of life: more time, more money, more freedom, more health, more love, and more happiness in life. Today, we have none other than legendary football coach, father, community leader, all around amazing man and mentor to so many of us, Mr. Coach Bill MacCarrick. For those of us that know him or played for him, he needs no introduction whatsoever. For those of us that don't know him, there is no introduction that would do him justice. There's an old quote from Dr. Robert Brooks who says this, and this quote epitomizes everything in which Bill MacCarrick stands for. The quote says this: one of the most important factors that contributes to the resilience in children is the presence of at least one person in their lives who believes in them. Bill MacCarrick was that one person for all of us that played for him over all of these years. We were trying to figure this out, and Bill is approaching, I think, 106 years old, almost. And so he's been coaching for about 75 years. But in reality of it is, I think we figured out that he's been coaching almost 45 years of his life. He's a huge Green Bay Packers fan. He's coached myself and so many other players in multiple sports. He coached me in baseball for Ann Arbor Railroad for 2 years. He coached us at St. Paul baseball for 2 years. He coached Shane Kovich, Dave Beauchamp, and many of us on this line for the Little Green Giants, which would have been 1978, 79, and 1980. And then he coached us in 1981 and 82 at the St. Paul junior high football level. In addition to that, he was a junior high football coach at Owasso Junior High. After his junior high football coaching at St. Paul, eventually in the years ahead, he went on to become the head football coach at Perry High School, head football coach at Chesaning High School, head football coach at Morris High School, and an assistant coach at Corunna High School. Bill is an amazing man. He's a father, a husband, a grandfather, and one of my all-time favorite people in the world. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming our special guest today, Coach Bill MacCarrick. Okay, we got to unmute you, Bill. Somehow we got muted. We got to unmute you. Somehow we got you muted. All right, we got to keep going. You're still muted. Valerie, is there any way you can unmute him and then have everybody mute them? There we
How
go,
about
Bill.
now?
All right, you're
There
good.
now?
Yep,
Okay.
perfect.
I'm very humbled by that introduction. I don't think I deserve any of that. I just kind of did what I did and what came natural. So it was fun. I had a lot of good mentors that helped me to develop my coaching philosophy, and I just applied that, and the rest is history, as they say.
Well, I think back in the 1970s, we were always taught to call people like Mr. Beauchamp or Mr. Kovich or Mr. Kennedy. We didn't call anybody by the first name. And as soon as I met you the first day, and probably many of your players, you said, no, just call me Coach Bill. Coach Bill. And that was an amazing thing as a young child to call an adult by their first name without putting the Mr. in front of it. And from that day forward, I knew that this was a special relationship and a special friendship. So let's talk quickly before we dive into your fanhood, of the Green Bay Packers and all of your coaching careers. Talk quickly about your childhood, because there's another saying that says that which does not kill you strengthens you. And I will tell you this: I have felt my entire life that I've had an unfair advantage in business, in life, in school, in all things that I've done because of the hard work, the discipline, the determination, the perseverance, the teamwork that you taught me. So obviously that maybe came from the hardships that you had as a youth. So talk quickly about your childhood.
Well, I certainly grew up in humble beginnings. My parents divorced when I was in fourth grade, and after that, things got really rough. We were really quite poor. I mean, to the point where there was times when we were actually heating our house during the winter by burning furniture because we couldn't afford to buy coal or wood to burn in our coal stove. So I grew up with very humble beginnings. If I
And this
had
wasn't
a,
this wasn't furniture that was like in a neighbor's house or in the backyard or in the barn. This
it
was
was
furniture from
hopefully
your own
extra.
house.
It was furniture that we hopefully wouldn't need in the future. Obviously, it
Yeah.
wasn't my bed or anything like that, but um, yeah, it was interesting. And the coal furnace wasn't designed for that. So the thing would turn red hot and it became my job to go down to the basement and sit on the stairs and watch the furnace to make sure it didn't blow up or something. So yeah, that was always kind of fun. But yeah, we there was a period of time when we survived on welfare food and had to decide which order we were going to have the wheat meal, cornmeal, or rice for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So, that was kind of the variety that we had oftentimes when I was growing up. And if I was lucky, when school started, if I had a new set of clothes to wear on the first day, I felt very fortunate. So it was those kinds of humble beginnings that kind of made me a very shy kind of kid in school and kind of drawn back. And so sports was my kind of way to break out of that, and I was decent at sports, and so I became a little bit more accepted, I think, among my peers because of my ability. So I really thank athletics for allowing me to do that. Never dreamed through high school that I'd ever be a coach. That was the furthest thing away from anything that I ever dreamed of doing. And my brother, who was 10 years younger than I am, wanted to play youth league football, kicks at the time. And so we lived in Henderson at the time, and I drove him to practice and
And by
just
the
kind of
way, this is Henderson, Michigan, and we
yes.
all grew up in Owasso, Michigan. And those of you that are from Michigan, we always do the hand symbol and we point to where it is. So this hometown that we're talking about is Owasso, Michigan, right between Flint and Lansing, about an hour and a half northwest of Detroit.
Henderson is about 10 miles north of Owasso, and it was part of the school district. It was part of Owasso School District. Uh, so that was so. Anyway, I drove um, my brother to practice, Dan, and stood around, and there was a lot of kids on the team, and they needed help, and I had just graduated from high school and knew a little bit
And what
about
year?
football. Just
What year
really
was this? What year was this? What year did you graduate?
72.
1972. So your first experience was with Kicks football was in 1973. The
Yes.
following.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I just was kind of hanging out and hanging on to the dummies and just not really coaching. The guy that was coaching the team, Don Moore, which ended up becoming one of my best friends and mentor and really teacher of coaching. I mean, he was probably the certainly the first influence on coaching and probably the most important. He really didn't know a lot of football. He was really a baseball coach. I mean, he understood and played baseball at a very high level, but he really didn't know a lot about football. So I was helping him out, and there were 60 kids on the team that year. So it was just him
And
and
was
me
this the big
who,
the big greens? Because for those of you that know, back in the day, to protect us little guys, Dave and Shane and I, we played for the little greens, which I think was 85 pounds and younger. And then you had the
correct,
big greens, which was like 86 pounds and older. So were you coaching Don for the big greens or the little greens, or back in 73? It was
little
everybody.
greens. It was always the little greens.
Okay. So Dan, you're telling me that Dan was a little green? Because he's a big guy. I
Yep.
always thought Dan
Well,
was a
Dan, his first year was quite small, and he did play for the little greens. And then because he was pretty good, he was like right on that tipping point, 85, 86 pounds. So he did go up to the big greens and play for them.
But meanwhile, you coached for all of those years. So your true first experience with football and your first memory of that of coaching was Don Moore asking you to be his assistant coach. And when we showed up, Dave and Shane and I, it would have been fourth grade. And I'm just trying to do the math again. I think that would have been 1978. And that would have been our first year. So I guess we didn't realize you were already coaching for 5 years by then.
Yeah, yeah. And there
Wow.
was a lot of, like a lot of players from those days. There was a kid. Our first quarterback that I remember was Johnny Leggett, a neat little kid. Um, Always showed up for practice really early and went through all the drills. And Don Moore, our whole offense was all about the quarterback reverse pivoting and handing the ball off, and the footwork in that was pretty intricate. It seemed like that, or it seemed like that. So he'd go out and practice those steps and do all that stuff. But that was kind of the beginning. And he was an interesting young man because he didn't play high school football, and I always wondered why. And there was a big thing about that. And I wrote an editorial into the Argus Press about why kids, because it was always feared that youth league football burnt kids out, and so by the time they got to high school, they didn't want to play anymore. I totally didn't think that was true, and tried to explain the position and what was going on. So he was a part of that, and so yeah, that was the early days.
So let's go back into your high school career. You had some amazing mentors yourself: George Eiler, Don Gray, Gordy Weeks, Jim Eldridge. Talk about the importance that some of these mentors had in your life and your football career.
All of those were important. George Eiler was he had a stint at almost playing professional football. He had a tryout for the Chicago Bears as a punter and kicker, and brought all of that experience. And he was a very experienced coach. And he was there. He had coached Brad Van Pelt when I was a freshman, and Brad was a senior. So he had coached Brad throughout his high school career. And after my junior year, he left Owasso and went to Saginaw Arthur Hill, and 2 years later had the really famous undefeated unscored upon team that he had coached there. This was before they had a playoff system, so he was, by ranking of state teams, they were the best team in the state.
Ever. I can't imagine a team not giving up a single field goal or touchdown the entire season. And I
Yeah, and
didn't believe
they and he had a lot of injuries. He had lost all his linebackers and had to replace them with second string kids and still maintain the unscored upon season. So
Wow. So your high school football days, your freshman, sophomore, junior year, you played offensive guard, and then your senior year, you played nose tackle. Talk about your high school,
actually my junior year.
your junior year. Okay, talk about your
Yeah.
high school experience as a football player.
Well, my freshman year I had great coaches, Bill Hill and John Caruso. Bill Hill actually he seemed old when I was a freshman, but he ended up also coaching for me when I was at Morris for a couple of years. So it was kind of cool to have that connection. But just really, really awesome coaches. And he gave us that confidence and experience. Jim Eldridge was my junior high coach. He was we in junior high we could play football in eighth grade. Seventh graders weren't allowed. It was just an eighth grade program, and he was my junior high football coach, and then became my wrestling coach. Uh, so he was instrumental in getting me started. And the year before my junior high year of playing football, I had injured my eye. It was my first injury to my eye, and I had to practice with this metal shield on my eye. And so I think I had an advantage because I think kids were afraid to hit me as hard as others because they were afraid of knocking the thing off my eye. So, I took advantage of that.
And didn't you also get a cheap shot like in the back of the head? And that was the
That
original.
was that was later on.
Wow.
That was my junior year, the last game against Mount Morris, and that's what caused my eye injury that led to me losing my eye. It was acute glaucoma, and that was obviously kind of traumatic. But uh, I would if I had it to do over again, I would do the same thing. It was
I
not bad.
remember I remember at Adams skating rink in the winter, it was an ice skating rink at Adams
Oh yeah.
Park.
Yep.
And then in the summer, it was our football practice field. And
Yep.
our first year I met you, you kept taking your fake eyeball out and
Oh,
showing us, and you kept doing this. And as a kid that's like maybe 8, 9, 10 years old, we just thought that was the coolest thing that our coach had a fake eye and he could take it out and show us.
well, when I first started coaching, it was before I lost my eye, and the eye was a mess. It had like blisters on it, and it was really hideous to look at. So I always wore sunglasses to kind of hide it. And so I was always kind of self-conscious of that. And then obviously when they removed the eye and put in the artificial eye, it looked pretty normal again. So
Yeah. Well, you played there. I played there. Many of us on this line played at Wilman Field. And several years ago, Wilman Field was voted one of the top 10 most historic football stadiums in all of the state of Michigan because I think it was built during the 30s or 40s during the war project. And you,
it was built for a WPA project
wow, okay.
during the Depression to put people to work.
Wow.
So
Okay,
yeah.
so I remember the last year, the last game of the season for Little Greens, we would all play at Wilman Field. And I remember feeling like I was an all-pro because they would play on the overhead speaker system. They would play the Rocky music from the movie, the first song, and then later Eye of the Tiger, that song. And I was down on the field, and I just thought like it was the greatest thing ever. And I'm sure Dave and Shane know that as well. So that
That was
kind
a cool day, and all of us coaches back then were best of friends. So we would always have gimmick plays and stuff like that, just to confuse the officials and refs and have a good time with it. We really had a good time, and it was never about winning or losing. It was always about getting the kids playing time and all that. And we would signal across the field that we're putting our second string kids in, and so they would put their second string kids in, and so it was always kind of a fair environment for kids to play and hopefully a fairly safe environment.
So there we go. Like after 3 years of playing for you at the Little Greens in Adams Park, and by the way, I think we had one or two championships of those 3 years. I
Of
don't think
course
we
we did.
uh, I don't think we won all 3 years, but I think two of the 3 years we did very, very well. And then we show up the August 1981 at St. Paul Junior High for the football program. And now we go from the little greens where you have 85 pounds and younger, and then the big greens, which was 85 pounds and higher, to playing junior high football where there was no weights. And so
Yeah,
on
there was
team,
there
on
was
that
weights.
on that team, you had all the guys playing together. So you were now in your second year coaching. So Dave, Beauchamp, and many of the others that were on this call or listening to the recording, we show up for practice, and St. Paul didn't have their own field. So here we are, August of 1981. We don't have our own field, and we practice and play at Bryant Field, which as a kid, it seemed like it was about 6 or 7 miles away. And later, I went and I did that drive, and I think it's like 1.5 miles away. But something happened with the team bus. So, talk about how many guys showed up for the team. Talk about what was the issue with the team bus and why we couldn't take the team bus to practice. I think we got you muted by mistake again. So, we got to unmute you.
Okay, here we go.
There
All
we
right.
go.
The bus was an old bus, and it was poorly maintained, and I had to go and get the special permit to be able to drive the bus. So I did that and did the road test on the bus and all of that, which scared the hell out of me.
And by the way, you'd never driven a bus before.
Nope, never.
So here you are, our coach driving the bus to and from games without ever having driven a bus before. I just
That's
love
correct. That's correct.
it.
And driving to practice, and we did that early on, and then the bus was red tagged. There was 23, I think it was 23 different violations that the bus had that had to be repaired before we could drive it again. So it sat for a long time. So that was when we decided, well, we'll just run to practice and run home.
Well, wait a minute, but didn't all the parents show up with cars, like trying to carpool us? And then you
Yeah.
turned everybody away. Why did you turn them away? Why didn't you just let us get a ride to and from practice?
I thought the conditioning was better for us. We could get that out of the way, and then when we got to practice, we could focus on the football stuff.
So there we were. So there we were running, helmet, shoulder pads, all of our pads, running 5 miles to practice, practicing for 3 hours, and then running 5 miles home. And so, what was the actual distance?
The actual distance,
Yeah.
like you said, you're the one that mapped it out, a mile and a half or 2 miles, whatever that was.
So let's just say a mile and a half. So we're doing 3 miles of conditioning to and from practice, running in full pads, and then practicing for 3 hours.
Don't
And I
forget time lapse.
and I think if you did that today, you'd probably get written up by the school board and probably kicked out of the city for.
We had to cross a couple major roads, so yeah.
Okay, so talk about what was the reason? Why was conditioning so important? How many guys did we have on the team? What was your
Well, that
strength?
was the Vince Lombardi fan
Okay, tell us about Vince
and
Lombardi and
and
what.
and a Gordy Weeks fan. Both of those guys stress conditioning. Uh, Coach Weeks was really big on conditioning, and his philosophy was that if you could stay alive till the third period of a wrestling match, you had a shot at winning. So the conditioning was really important. And I took it to heart, and I worked my tail off to be in the best shape that I could because I knew I wasn't a very good wrestler. I was average at best. And so my only hope to be successful was to be in better shape than my opponent. So I really bought into that philosophy that Coach Weeks had, and that became a important part of my coaching philosophy.
So how many guys do we have on the team at the beginning of the season, at the end of the season?
St. Paul's, we probably had 15 or so at the beginning. Um, Trent Rupoon and Jeff Hauk both had knee injuries, and I think must have had surgery because they had full-length casts on. I remember that well because they still came to practice every day, even with their full-length cast. And they also ran time lapse with the cast on, which to me seems really, I can't believe I did that. But I was a young coach and probably didn't know any better.
So now we're like at 12 guys on the team. And for those of you who don't know football, you play 11 starters on the field at a time, 11 on offense and 11 on defense. And most schools or most teams would have 11 different players play offense and 11 different players play defense. But because we had 12 guys, we all had to play both ways, offense and defense. So talk about we ran to practice and back from practice. But before we ran back, we did these time laps. So what is a time lap?
I don't. Again, Coach Weeks was my JV football coach as well, and he kind of the one that introduced them to me. And what you do is you line up on the end line of the football field where the goalpost was at, and then by position, you had a certain number of seconds that you had to run around the opposite goalpost and back again. You had X number of seconds to make it in. If you
And I
didn't
think it was
make
like
it,
40 seconds. It's like 40 seconds.
yeah, it was different for each group. Linemen had a little more time than running backs, and receivers were separate. So they ran, everybody ran by position and by skill by their skill set. So, and if you didn't make it in that time, it didn't count, and you did another one. So that was the whole push.
And I think there were times we did 5 and 6 and 7 time laps. And then we
The,
did
the
gut
record was 7. And I
7
don't know
time
if
laps.
I don't think that was a St. Paul record. I think that was a Morris football record.
Well, and then about 2 weeks later, the team bus is all repaired. All those red tags are taken care of. All of us in the locker room are so excited. We got the bus back. We're going to be fine. No more of this running to and from, back and forth. And then
I
all of a sudden,
liked it.
like, and
No,
then what
so we
happened?
did it.
So what
We
you do?
ran anyway.
You decided, no, we're not going to use the team bus. We're just going to save that
Exactly.
for game day.
Exactly.
And maybe it was you just didn't know how to drive a bus
Nobody
and
got,
ran them.
in the process, nobody got ran over. So I figured we might as well keep doing it.
Well, and I think Pat Carmody, didn't he
Oh
stop
yeah, Pat
for
Carmody.
pizza on the way home? Like he would stop at someone's house and bring a
Todd
pizza
Beck
in?
was his cousin, and he lived out along the route. And Pat was I think I caught him once, but he would stop at Todd's house and pick up a slice of pizza and eat that on the way home.
So he wasn't running. He was walking home.
Oh, Pat never ran.
He was one of the most favorite people of all time.
Yeah.
So there we go. Let's talk about the size of the team because I went from playing on the Little Greens where we were all boys. None of us knew what puberty was. We didn't have armpit hair, none of that. We go to seventh grade and we have about 3 or 4 or 5 giants. I mean, we're talking about men that are full grown, already having armpit hair, already having beards, over 6 foot tall, almost 200 pounds. And I think my seventh grade year, I was 5'4", 101 pounds. And talk about these big guys. I mean, that was a big part of their
Well,
success.
day one at St. Paul's, after I was hired as the head coach, I was standing outside of the school and welcoming people as they came in. We were having a team meeting, I think. It was a meeting for parents and players to go over my expectations and philosophies and things like that. And so I would shake hands with the dads and moms and welcome the players as they went into the gym. And one guy came up to me, and I had heard about this kid from Durand that was transferring to St. Paul's to play football. And I heard he was a big kid and all of that. And so this tall kid, he was, Tim Pierce, who we're talking about, was probably 6'3" or maybe even 6'4" as an eighth grader. And his dad was a short, stocky guy.
And at least 200 pounds, at least 200 pounds.
Yeah, yeah, probably, yeah. And they walk up to me as a pair, and I introduce myself to them. And the dad shakes my hand. As he shakes my hand, he says to me in a very stern voice, "You mess with my son, and I'll rip your face off." And that's and I didn't know if he was joking or not, and I don't think he was joking. And so that was kind of the start of that. And so here I am as a first year head coach at a junior high, being in my early 20s. That was pretty intimidating. But yeah, Tim Pierce was all of 6'4", 200 pounds plus. John Kimball, another kid, a local kid, uh, was just a little bit shorter than Tim, probably 6'3". Probably weighed as much. He was a little bit thicker than Tim. So I had those two guys. And then probably the next biggest guy, well, weight wise, we had Pat Carmody, Matt Hebekaiser. They were
Uh,
big kids.
yeah. Joe
Um,
Albright was another big lineman.
what?
Joe Albright was another big
Yeah, Joel
offensive
Albright
lineman.
was our center.
Yeah.
Did a great job at that. And so yeah, it was different. And of course, you were one of the smaller guys,
I was the boy. I
and
was the boy among men.
at that time.
Yep. Yep.
And I don't. What you play on offense before you came quarterback?
I was
I don't
like a
remember.
wide receiver, tight
Wide
end.
receiver or
You know,
something.
wide, yeah.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
had one of those. But you were a linebacker and was a vicious player on defense. I mean, even though you were quite small, you were really. I mean, you played way bigger than you were at
So,
linebacker, and that made our defense was unscored upon.
well,
That
I think we gave up what 12 points for the entire
Well,
season.
it wasn't unscored upon. Girard did score against us one. They scored 6 points against us, but
I
they were
thought
the
we
only
gave up
ones.
12 for the whole season. Was it actually 6 that we gave up?
I think six. I don't remember anybody else scoring on us.
Okay. Didn't we score like the Saint Resurrection scored on us because we're going to talk about
Did they?
The Brian Kennedy story in a
Well,
few.
that there was 0-0 at halftime in that game.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
So now the season starts, and you decide that you're going to do a power I, and you're going to put the big guys, the both of the 200 pounders in the backfield. And then we had this star running back named Brian Kennedy that was extremely fast and super good athlete. And then what happened with the league? Because we started
Well,
winning games, and you started
first
taking.
of all, there was a rule. There was a rule in the rule book that said no ball carrier could weigh more than 140 pounds. Well, Brian was probably naturally 145, maybe a little more than that. So he had to kind of cut weight on the weigh-in day to make it under 140. So he was a big running back. but it said ball carrier. And I looked at that and go, ball carrier, okay. So I had Tim Pierce, who was 200 pounds, John Kimball, who was 200 pounds, and I put him in the backfield.
As basically as two
They,
fullbacks, as two
yeah, there
fullbacks.
were two fullbacks. There was the fullback and a power I back, and they weren't going to carry the ball. So they weren't ball carriers. And we got into trouble for that later on, but it was a a cool concept because we ran we all we ran was isolation plays. So everything at the offensive line was double teams. It would isolate on a linebacker and send those two mammoths through the hole to knock down the linebacker. And Brian was behind that and was pretty good at running to daylight and was pretty quick when he got out in the open. So
We
it
had
worked
power
out
eye
really
left
well.
and power eye right, and then Brian
Yeah,
Kennedy scored all of our touchdowns. We're
yeah.
now, into the season. We've won 2 and 3 games. We got a 22-year-old coach that doesn't know how to drive a bus, driving us from Owasso, Michigan to Lansing, Michigan. 35, 40 minutes away to our home game, away games, and then home games. So then, didn't Doug Waldy and Max O'Rourke stick up for you one time with
Oh
regards to
yeah, I mean
the committee?
because of the rules, because everybody else in the league interpreted anybody in the backfield couldn't be more than 140 pounds. And so I kind of, changed that a little bit and they were upset. They thought the intent of the rule was not to have anybody in the backfield that weighed more than 140. But that's not what the rule book said. So they protested that, and there was a big league meeting, and I wasn't invited to it. I couldn't go to it. But Doug Waldy, who was the athletic director, and Max O'Rourke, who was the principal, they went to the meeting and stood up for me, I guess, or stood up for the rule and my interpretation of that rule, and they couldn't find fault with it, but they did change it for the next year.
And I remember in the athletic department office, we had that bumper sticker that said Slippery Rock University. I remember that.
Yeah, yeah.
And that must be where some of these meetings went happen. Okay, so now we're 2 wins, 3 wins. Maybe we're 3-0. Maybe we're 4-0. And I think we're playing Resurrection at home. And Brian Kennedy takes the ball as our running back around the end, gets knocked out of bounds, and we have those metal poles that has the down symbols on, so it's first down, second down. He goes into that sideways, and if I understand it correctly, I think he broke his ribs, but that metal, this is cast iron metal, not the cheap plastic ones, the cast iron metal
Well, they were homemade.
was bent. I mean, it was like bent because his ribs went into that. So talk about his injury and then talk about
Well,
his dad and what happened next.
before that we played Girard, so we can't skip that game.
Well, I thought Gerard was the second to last game of the year.
No, no.
Okay,
No,
so St.
Girard was
Gerard.
was was in the middle, either the third or fourth game.
Okay, so we play at St. Gerard, and I remember looking up, and they had like 80 guys
Right.
on their team. They
They
had
had at least
80,
60.
probably 60. And John Smoltz later played pitcher for the Atlanta Braves, was their quarterback. So talk about that St. Gerard game.
They were awesome. I mean, Girard won the league every year. I mean, no one could ever hold a candle to them, and they were the dominant team, and they were a much bigger Catholic school than anybody else in our league, and they truly dominated everything. And we went in there with I think 13 dress bodies to play this team of 60, and it was an interesting game. I mean, they scored first, we scored, uh, and then we went ahead. Sean Davis, our quarterback, on the very last play of the first half on defense, made a play at the goal line to keep a touchdown from scoring and broke his wrist while he did it. And so my quarterback had a broken wrist. And I didn't really know it was broken, but I knew it was sore enough that he couldn't play. And so at halftime, I didn't have a backup quarterback. We never used a different quarterback. So I didn't have anybody that had ever taken a snap before other than Sean. And so at halftime, we had to kind of figure out what we were going to do. And of course, you, Pat, became that person. And what happened was I asked Sean if he could play one series in the second half, and he thought he could. So he went in and played quarterback for one series, and I had him go through all of our basic plays, and I had Pat by my side say, okay, here's what to do on this play. And so he was getting a tutorial on how to play quarterback from the sideline watching Sean play. And so after the one series, Pat goes in, never have taken a snap from a center before, never have played a moment of quarterback in his entire life, became our starting quarterback, and did pretty well actually. And Sean wasn't able to play quarterback for the rest of the year because he had a cast on. So Pat became our quarterback from that point forward.
So that's my claim to fame. I was the
Yep.
backup quarterback for the 1981 St. Paul Blue Waves, and I got my opportunity to go in and be the starter as a boy with men the last three, 4 games of the year. And one
You
thing I
kick.
remember about St. Gerard's is St. Gerard's, their uniforms looked like they were
Oh, yeah.
pros. And they had these really nice helmets with the Falcon Eagle on there. And then this was our helmet. And I don't know if you can see this, but this was the St. Paul Blue Waves helmet that we had. And if you look on the inside, this is actually concrete cement. I mean, at one point it was rubber, but it's so hard. It's amazing we all didn't get concussions. And then we used to get these blue stickers if we made a good play. And so,
Nope, nope. That blue sticker wasn't that. That blue sticker was to tell you, indicate that you weighed less than 140 pounds.
is that what that was?
Yep. You
Okay,
weigh in, and
I
they
did
would put
not
a
know
sticker on
that.
your helmet.
Yeah, so this is it. This was the actual helmet. And Bill, you gave
That
this to me several years ago, and I'll treasure this for a lifetime. And
that
also,
logo took me days and days and days to design.
that logo, you designed
Yeah,
it.
the logo. I didn't realize you could just call them up and say, "This is what I want." So,
So
I went to an artist.
this was our team. And some people say it was just like the Mighty Orphans. And I'm like, well, we were mighty, but we weren't orphans. And so that was the team of about 13, 14, 12 of us. And then this was the team in the huddle. And
That's my favorite picture right there.
you can see these big guys. Those are the ones that are 6 foot, and the rest of us are like 5 foot. Those guys are men. We're boys. And then here is someone gave me this photo. Bill, I think you sent this to me, but there I was, number 11. And then I think Kennedy was running the ball, or maybe that was Trent Rapoon. But anyways, I cherish these photos. So we win against St. Gerard. So we're now undefeated, and we're still, what, maybe 4-0? Is that about
Yeah,
right?
that'd be like 4-0.
And then the next game, Brian Kennedy breaks
Right.
his ribs.
At home
We
game.
we somehow win that, and I think we're 5-0. And
Oh,
then
that's the game where Brian got hurt. The
okay,
next game.
but he didn't play the game that he got hurt, right? Was the game after?
No, he played it. He played in that game and got hurt. And in the down box, it was just it was a homemade down box made out of half-inch galvanized pipe, and so it didn't bend. There was no bend to it, and it didn't get dropped. And Brian hit it with his hip, not with his ribs, caused a hip pointer.
Okay.
And his dad was a doctor slash lawyer, and um, he called me up on Wednesday and told me that Brian wasn't going to be able to play this next game because on Wednesday the bruise was still bleeding. So it was pretty severe.
And he's a doctor. He knows more than a 20-year-old
Right.
football coach, right?
Right. So he told me Brian wasn't going to be able to play. So I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know how we could possibly win without him.
Because
And
by the
he
way, I
told
think
me,
Brian was the only one the entire season that scored touchdowns. Like he was the
right,
guy that
exactly.
scored our touchdown. Nobody else did. It was all him.
And Brian was also our punter and kicker. We didn't have another one. So Brian's dad said he could punt and kick. He just can't play a scrimmage down. And that kind of, I didn't argue with that but I go, he can get hurt probably more on a punt play or a kickoff play than, but I was okay with the fact that he could at least do those things. So we go into the game and not knowing how to score.
Was this the last game of the season, or was this
No,
game
this would be,
probably game 5?
yeah, it was the last game of the season.
Okay.
Yeah, it was the last game of the season. Brian got hurt in the fifth game, and this would be the last game. So the score is 0-0. It's a crappy, rainy, snowy, cold day. And at halftime, we're on the bus.
Because that was our locker room. We all
That
went
was our
back to the
locker room.
bus for the locker room. That was where we did the pregame and the postgame and the halftime
Yeah,
talk.
the only time we'd go on the bus at halftime was if the weather was bad, and the weather was bad. So I'm trying to figure out what we're going to do to score a touchdown. And the door was closed on the bus, and there was a knock on the door. And Brian's dad is at the door. So I open the door. He sticks his head in, holds up his finger, and goes, "One series." That's all he said was one series. And walked away.
He's giving you permission to let Brian play one series.
Yeah, yeah, that was the thing. So okay. So obviously Brian played tailback that first series, the second half. We score a touchdown, go ahead 6-0, and that becomes the final score.
And we win the championship. We're
We win the
undefeated.
championship. Undefeated.
And the reason why this book is titled Last Undefeated Season is because we were on cloud 9. And by the way, this is our team in the team bus after that game, holding up the number 1 finger, right? And it wasn't the
Right.
middle finger, it was the index finger, saying number 1.
I think so. Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, and the point of it is the reason why we titled this book Last Undefeated Season, because when you're in the 7th grade and you're 12 years old and you go undefeated, 6 wins and 0 losses, you just assume that you're going to grow up and you're going to play in the NFL. You're going to play, football for Michigan State. You're going to be all league, all world, and you're going to have many, many, many more undefeated seasons. And I will tell you, I played basketball, I played baseball, I played football, I played tennis, I played all these other sports. Never again in the history of my entire life had we ever had another undefeated season. And so if I look back at my child youth sports, that experience was the pinnacle of success of our last undefeated season. And what an amazing experience that was. So
Yeah, it was an amazing experience for lots of reasons. I was very fortunate to have such a great group of kids there. I mean, they worked their tails off. They did time lapse. They did all the conditioning stuff. And I was a young coach that didn't know any better. I didn't know that they could refuse to do that if they wanted. They just didn't. And it was just the right group of kids, the right time to do that. And coaching might be part of it, but it wasn't. It was more about the heart of the players, all of them, and the fond memories that bring tears to my eyes all of the time about that team and many other teams that I've coached and many other players.
And believe it or not, the games were the easiest part of that season because we were like little Marine Corps, football players. We were like in the best shape of our lives. We would run 1.5 miles to practice, 1.5 miles home. We would do 3 or 4 or 5 time laps under 40 seconds. I think that was the time that I had. And then it would be raining, and the grass wasn't a grass field. It was like mud and grass and holes and mud, and it was like a gravel road just about
Yeah,
with
it
a
wasn't
little
well
bit of
kept.
grass in there. And then you'd make us do gut busters where we run in place and then you blow the whistle and we jump down and land on our chest in a mud puddle and then we get up again and then you blow the whistle. We do that for 10 or 12 or 15 minutes. And there was one time when I was running back home from practice, I literally felt like my stomach hurt so bad, so bad, so bad. And then you were driving by in your yellow Plymouth with the dummies hanging out. What was that car?
It
A big
wasn't the Plymouth.
It was a Dodge, or what was
It was
it?
a Mercury.
Yellow Mercury, and you had the tackling dummies hanging out, and you're yelling, "Come on, keep running, keep running!" And my stomach was hurting, and I felt like I crapped my pants that day. And then I got back to the locker room, and I was so happy that it was a false alarm. But I tell you what, those practices, surviving those practices, that's what's given me an unfair advantage in life and business because of teamwork, discipline, dedication, perseverance, sacrifice. I could go on and on and on. You have no idea how you molded me and all these other young kids and young men to basically tackle anything that life had happened. So, what was your level of confidence? What did that feel like your first year finishing as a head coach, going undefeated, 6-0? That had to give you some confidence and realize, you know what, this coaching thing is a good gig for me.
Yeah, it was maybe I know what I'm doing, maybe all that, but any of the wrestlers that are on here, those practices were a piece of cake compared to our wrestling practices. I think you guys may agree to that. I mean, those back in the dungeon of the junior high. I mean, those were something, and I was much harder on the wrestlers than I ever was on the football players.
I
So
could have
Well,
swore there were
there's that. There's
bodies.
that.
Yeah,
There's
there were
there's that to
bodies.
be said.
Yeah. Well, I remember maybe my sophomore, junior year, we had Sean Houck on our team and our basketball team. We were all playing basketball, and the basketball and the wrestlers, we shared the same locker room. And Sean Houck was always talking trash to the Smith kids. I think it was Kevin and Chris Smith, the little redheaded. They were like 105-pound weight. And Sean Houck was this big, tall, 6 foot, maybe 180-pound, awesome basketball player. He could shoot the lights out of a basket. They're talking trash, talking trash, talking trash. And so we're at a varsity basketball game. So Shane Kovich was there. Dave Beauchamp, I'm sure, was there. And then all of a sudden, the 105-pound wrestler challenges Sean Houck at 180 pounds to a fight. So there's about 50 of us up in the bleachers watching the Owasso High varsity basketball game, and the whole bleachers leaves to go behind the school where the snowbanks were to witness this fight. So then there they were, squared head to head, 105-pounder versus 180. And then all of a sudden, Sean takes a couple swings. He might hit him a couple times. And then all of a sudden, just like a cowboy would, round up a calf in one of those lassos, I see Kevin Smith. He just ties up Sean Houck in this arm headlock, gets him on the ground, starts just popping him one after another, and blood starts coming out of his nose. And Sean's like, "Uncle, uncle, uncle, I give up." And in that moment, I learned a very important lesson. And in that point frame, I decided I will never, my entire life, mess with a wrestler, because I witnessed the strength and power in fight of a wrestler that day.
Well, at the high school level, the locker room was beyond the wrestling room, and you had to walk by the door of the wrestling room to get to the gym. So the basketball players would inch up to the door of the wrestling room, and they would peek in to see if anybody's looking, and then they would scurry across the doorway so they wouldn't get caught, because the wrestlers would always grab basketball players and bring them in and give them pink bellies or hang them from the ladders or whatever. And basketball players, they were terrorized by the wrestling team.
Yeah, I can see
There
that.
was always that.
Okay, so in total, you probably coached 15, 18 years of baseball, maybe 20, 30 years of wrestling, probably 20, 30, 40 years of football. Talk about real quick, what did you enjoy most about coaching baseball?
Um, Baseball was a sport that I coached way differently than I did the other sports. Conditioning wasn't a factor, in my opinion, in baseball. So it was more of a laid back kind of technical sport and all of that. So I went into I mean, I never played baseball in my life. So I had no idea of how difficult it was to hit a baseball. And so I didn't have that concept. So my expectations were pretty high for players to be able to do that. And so it was that kind of mentality. It was more of a me being a cheerleader and blowing smoke up their tails to give them the confidence to go and face a pitcher that was throwing the ball 60 miles an hour or 70 and to be able to hit the ball. And so it was a I didn't have the empathy that a baseball player who becomes a coach would have. So my expectation level was probably higher than what it should have been of me having the player. So and they were able to rise for the most part to those expectations. And so we were pretty successful. In fact, my win-loss record probably in baseball was the best of the three sports that I coached.
Well,
So in
I
many
remember
ways, I was a more successful baseball coach than I was a football or wrestling coach.
you coached us at St. Paul baseball, and after all of the games, I remember we played at St. Gerard against John Smoltz. And when John Smoltz wasn't pitching, I think we won that game 1-0 because we played double headers. And then
Yeah.
the game that John Smoltz from the Atlanta Braves was pitching, I think they beat us like 13-0. But Pat Carmody hit a home run and they didn't have outfield fences. He had a line shot up the middle that went like 2.5 miles. And Pat Carmody made an inside the park home run, and it was amazing.
Well,
But
no, we had to have an oxygen tank at second base for him to stop and take before he continued on. So yeah, it was a long ways.
yeah, but I remember after every baseball game, you would drive us to the McDonald's in East Lansing, Michigan, by Michigan State, and we would get those vanilla ice cream cones, and they were 10 cents a piece. And we'd have like a buck, $2 to our name, and we'd come out and we'd have 8 or 9 or 12 ice cream cones, and we'd bring this back into our bus, and we would just tell stories, and it was a whole nother experience.
Well, Patrick was probably kind of young, but the reason we stopped at McDonald's was because it was near Michigan State campus in East Lansing, and there was a house that was kind of kitty corner to McDonald's where girls would often sunbathe without their tops on. So that was the real reason why we stopped at that McDonald's.
How did I miss that? 12 years old, I had no
You were
idea
too
what.
young.
I always wondered why we'd sit in that parking lot for 2.5 hours.
Yeah,
Eating
that was why. That
back
was
home.
why. Yeah.
Okay, wrestling. Tell me about what you loved about wrestling and why that was so important to you.
Wrestling was an intense sport. Again, it was a neat sport for me because all the work was done in practice. So it's not like football where you got to think about plays and different things like that. You always mentally have to be in the game when you're coaching football. In wrestling, all the work is done in practice. So you build that confidence in what your wrestlers could do before the meet. So during the meet, I became a cheerleader, and I was pretty loud, and they could hear me and all that. But it was really a cheerleader thing. So it was I was able to get caught up in the emotion of wrestling, where I couldn't do that in football. And so it was an emotional charge, unlike the other two sports.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
it was a fun sport to coach.
Well, one thing that a lot of people don't know is you did not coach the varsity football team that I played on. I wish that you would have. We finished 0-9, and I guarantee that if you had been our coach, we'd have been 5-4, 4-5. We would at least won half of those games. But I used to call you the night before each of those games, and you'd give me a pep talk as a mentor to me. And I don't know if I've ever shared that with anybody, but we would spend 20, 30, 40 minutes on the phone, and you'd say, watch out
Wow.
for this and watch out about this. And I will tell you this, Bill, you in high school, when we played varsity, you volunteered to be the linesman. So you were holding the down thing or whatever. And I always loved looking over at you. I had my high school football coach on one side, which I admired and respected. But really, I was playing for you there, watching you there, and I absolutely loved it. And so, but you always talked to me. You said you gotta be a wrestler. You gotta be a wrestler. You gotta play wrestling. I'm like, nope. I'm gonna stick to basketball, and I think that was a good decision. But uh,
Well,
but nonetheless,
Patrick was the captain of the football team, and he started his motivational speaking early with that team, and they were 0-9. So every week we would have that Thursday conversation, and it was probably longer than a half hour. It was probably 45 minutes, hour, maybe sometimes longer than that, because he would want to talk about what can I talk to the team about after being 0-5 or 0-6. And so it was some difficult conversations and snowballing different ideas that he could present to the team in a positive way. So yeah, those conversations were important, and they were one of the highlights of my coaching career, actually, and just having that one-on-one talk with you. And I remember being on the sidelines in a game. I don't remember what game it was, but you got hurt and left the field in an ambulance. You
yeah,
remember that?
I think it was at Flushing, and I like stretched the ligaments in my ACL joint. We had those darn knee braces on, but I think the knee brace saved my knee because I was able to play the following week. But
Yeah.
it was a big hurt, I will tell you that.
But I remember seeing him on the stretcher being put in the ambulance. I was there, and he was kind of in tears of disappointment, almost like he's letting the team down because he got injured, and that was a very important moment in my life as well. Being there and sharing in that emotion of that.
And I remember my grandmother went to the emergency room with me, and that was cool to have her right there holding my hand. So that was a lot of fun. But came back the next week, wasn't very effective. But 2 weeks later, we were back to 100%. So, what did you like most about coaching football? We did wrestling, we did baseball. What do you love about coaching football?
Football was difficult. I mean, football was way more time consuming. The amount of time you have to look at video and look at scout and creating scouting reports and figuring out different things and creating a game plan. And then we often scripted our plays. And so figuring out what plays are going to go on the script and how to do that and what the scripted plays were going to tell us for the rest of the game and how to call it. So it was mentally much more exhausting and a lot more responsibility during the game as far as knowing as a coach you had it within you to help the team win or be responsible for a loss. So
Yeah.
that weighed on me pretty heavily in football. So it was the challenge of preparing them and doing that. And one of the things that I always was able to do was before the game, I would always come up with a motivational speech of some sort, and it never knew where that came from. And I have a pretty close relationship with my religion and God and all of that. And I really felt I was a conduit of God and was able to share those kinds of things with the team and inspire them and most of them I think were able to play above what their abilities were in part because they were emotionally prepared for that. So it was that emotional thing and then also learning about visualization and teaching how to visualize. That was an important part of my coaching philosophy as well.
But I would tell you, we're talking 1970s, early 80s. Nobody's talking about visualization. And you're teaching us to experience what it's like to win, to score touchdowns, to stop them on defense. And that was amazing.
Well, that
So,
goes back to my Green Bay stuff. And actually, being a big Green Bay fan, I end up understanding um, the Chicago Bears and Dick Butkus. Dick Butkus, in the end of his season, couldn't practice because his knees were so bad, and so he was the one that really pioneered the whole visualization stuff. And they actually would watch him watch video. And they would put electrodes on his muscles, and they realized that he was watching video was doing the same kinds of things that he would do if he was out actually practicing.
wow.
So the power of visualization became really evident to me, understanding Dick Butkus's approach to playing football.
So let's talk about Vince Lombardi. How did he impact your life? The head coach of the Green Bay Packers, who won the first two NFL championships before it was called the Super Bowl.
NFL championship,
Yeah.
the first two Super Bowls, but they had won a championship before that. So this whole thing about Kansas City being the first team to three-peat, Green Bay did it twice. So get that out of the way. Um,
So you were like a Vince Lombardi. You were the Vince Lombardi of our era.
well, when I was five, Lombardi I think it was his first or second year at Green Bay, and I was my dad, my immediate family didn't participate in sports, but we had a big Thanksgiving dinner with my uncles, and my uncles were all played football, and they were all bragging about how good the Lions were and how the Lions were going to win. It was the annual Lions Green Bay game, and as a 5-year-old kid, I'm watching the screen, a black and white TV, and it must have been cold that day because the Packers were standing in a tunnel waiting to come out on the field, waiting to be introduced, and the steam was coming off of their breath and all of that, and they just looked really intense. And as a 5-year-old, I looked at that and says, no, they're going to win. And I had no idea about Lombardi at that time, of course. I was 5. And Green Bay beat the Lions that day. And I got to eat the turkey leg all by myself. And, I've been a Packer fan. I was a Packer fan ever since. So then as I got older, I liked to read a lot. So I read everything I could find on Lombardi and the Green Bay Packers and his philosophy and all of that. And I kind of took it to heart, the hard work and all the things that he taught and preached and stuff. So um, yeah, he was a big influence on me as a player, and then to work hard and all of that. And then when I became a coach, certainly, I went back to that and reread a lot of stuff and understood and embraced his philosophy of football and conditioning and all of the things that Lombardi was about.
Yeah, but Vince Lombardi couldn't drive a bus for his team. You could. So that was
No, he probably couldn't. I remember a story where he actually he couldn't drive to practice even because he was so intense that he was afraid to get into an accident on his way to practice. So his wife would normally drive him to practice and drop him off. Well, one particular day, a friend drove him to practice, and without even thinking, he reached over, kissed him on the cheek, thinking it was her, and got out of the car and never realized it wasn't his wife that he kissed. So that was always a great story. It kind of shows the intensity that Lombardi had.
wow. So years later, after I graduated from high school, 87. By the way, what year did you graduate high school?
I graduated in 72.
72. Okay. Uh, so then after I graduated, obviously I went out west to Montana, and I think maybe we didn't obviously talk as much as we would have normally had I still stayed there. But then soon you became, I think it was Perry High School head varsity football coach. Was that the first varsity football coach that you were for Perry? Is that right?
No, well, Morris.
Morris. Okay, talk about Morris High School football. Share any experiences there. I think it was there that you coached your son. Talk about some of those teams, some of those players, some of those championships.
The year before I got the job at Morris, the team was coached by a guy who came up through the youth league program there and wasn't very knowledgeable, or nor did he have a really good grasp on any concepts that would help them. And they were huge. They were bigger. They talked about their size. Morris that year, the year before I coached them, was bigger than their offensive line was bigger than the starting offensive line of the Detroit Lions. They were huge, and they were predicted to go undefeated. And I think they won one game, and it was all because of coaching. The players dictated everything that happened. They ran the team. The coach was just a figurehead, and it was just chaos. And the athletic director, who was a great guy, but he was a cross country coach, so he didn't really understand football at all. And the guy worked for GM, and he had a shift change. So he told the athletic director, Roger Leach, that he couldn't coach the following year, so they needed a new coach. Joe Zerzinga, who was a teacher at the elementary school in Morris, and at the time I was coaching his son in baseball, and I saw an ad in the paper about them needing a new varsity football coach. And I mentioned it to Joe, and he lit up and says, "You'd be perfect." Well, anybody that doesn't know Joe Zerzinga, he played for Central Michigan, was a 2 or 3 time national champion.
As a
And
wrestler.
extremely good football player, extremely intense individual. And I was fortunate enough to coach with him for a few years as well, and learned a lot from him from that experience. But he then became the principal of the elementary school at Morris, so we became really good friends and got into some other things with the discipline program that I was involved with at Morris. But he suggested that I apply for the job, and I really wasn't interested. I was just kind of in passing. And he went and talked to Roger Leach, the athletic director, and told him that I was interested, which was not true. And Roger
because this
Leach
was
calls me up and says, "You ready for the interview?"
this was
And I'm
not a
going, "What
Wasso, right?
interview?"
Because this was not a Wasso football. You thought that you
This
were
is
gonna,
Morris.
yeah. But I'm saying that
Yeah,
you were
I was gold and blue all the way. I
because
was
this was a
coaching
competitor. Yeah,
freshman or JV football at the time,
yeah.
and I actually had coached freshman and JV, and then had gone back to the junior high. So I was actually coaching junior high when that opportunity came back up.
And this was one town away, a smaller school, and you were like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah, it's a Class D school, Division 8 school,
Yeah.
really really small, and so it was an opportunity, and I went and I interviewed. Why not? I mean, I had no intention of really taking the job or felt like I was qualified. And the interview lasted like 3 hours. I mean, it was really long. And he asked all kinds of questions. I mean, he was really big on sportsmanship and discipline and all of those kinds of things. And he wanted to really turn the page on what Morris football was previous years. Morris football that year before I coached had more yards lost in penalties than they had total offense. And that was their claim to fame. And it was mostly unsportsmanlike penalties on top of that. So Roger wanted that to be changed. And so, you know, I walked out of there in a daze going, he just gave me the job. And I can't believe it. Well, the link I had is I had a couple of players that I had coached in Owasso that Kirk or Kirk DeFriend and Brock DeFriend um, were players on that first team, and they were in Owasso. Their dad passed away, and I was really close to the whole family. And the mom moved back to Morris. That was where she was originally from. Took the kids with her, so they were playing football at Morris. So they knew me. They knew my style of coaching. And also Jason McCarthy, our quarterback, had played baseball for me, and he was an excellent athlete and went on and played football at Saginaw Valley and things and was really, I mean, he was a class a class quarterback and a class act, and they all knew my coaching style, so they kind of forewarned the team about what to expect, that this wasn't going to be like last year. And so
This is not,
they
this
were
is not going to be
great.
a country club experience. There's going to be no lazy people. The players aren't going to run the roost.
Right,
That
exactly.
Mr.
So
Discipline's coming in.
yeah, so I had no idea. I mean, I wasn't very good. I mean, I didn't have great X's and O's at that time, and maybe never did have. That was not my forte. But so I put together basically a Wassels offense and brought it to Morris, and Morris was a wing T team and did things totally differently. I mean, they had where they numbered the backs and numbered the holes, and that was the combination of how the plays were called. And I threw all of that out and brought in a Wassel system, which was by series, and it was a totally new concept for them. So they had to really, really learn football over again, and I learned on my way. And I don't know if Don Himmelsberg is still here. I don't know, but he was my assistant coach, and he was a great asset to me. And we developed. My first year at Morris, we basically ran the power I, the same offense that we ran at St. Paul's. It wasn't much different. And Don brought a new concept of a double slot one back offense formation, and he convinced me that to run that, and we did that, and we developed that into a pretty successful offense at Morris. So
How did you do like your first year? Because they were didn't do well before you, and then that first year, how was your team?
like I said, the year before me it was not 1-9. My first year at Morris, I think we were 4-5,
Yeah.
and then after that we I don't know if we had a losing season after that. Um, but we were in a we our league changed a lot. We were in a league where we had a lot of schools that were basically our size, and we were pretty competitive. And then we went into the SMAA league, and the schools were much bigger than us. Leslie, Maple Valley, all of that. Those schools were twice our size or bigger, and so it was an uphill battle in that league. But we could hold our own.
Did your son Brent play for you at Morris? And if
Yeah,
so,
Brett
talk.
played for me at Morris. He came to Morris as a I think an eighth grader, and Brent was a pretty good athlete. He was 6'4" and played pretty good. And I was always very conscious of the fact that I was his dad and didn't want to give him any special privileges or make it look like I was putting him in positions where because he was just my son. So he had to earn everything. And he was a freshman, and I was bound and determined he was going to play JV football when we had the JV program, and felt that that's where he should be. And before our scrimmage, before the season started, after we had been practicing, my entire offensive line came to me and told me we have to have Brent on the varsity. He's one of the best players. And so they convinced me to put Brent on the varsity, and Brent played center at first, and played in some positions, and then he ended up he was an excellent football. He became an excellent football player, and he ended up being a defensive end, which was his probably most natural position. And I couldn't play him at defensive end because he was so good that teams would run away from him. So I had to put him in the middle, do all of that. So I put him at nose guard. He was a disruptor there and all of that. So, and then offensively, I couldn't play him at a tackle or tight end because again they would overload that side of the field. So I put him at fullback. It was Coach Hill's idea to put him in the backfield, and I thought he was way too slow. Big guys, didn't wasn't that fast, and I watched a lot of film and him playing tight end, and he was really slow off the ball. And I go, I can't have him in the backfield being that slow. So Coach Hill convinced me that he was a fullback, and that would balance things out because then we could go left and right, and they couldn't, the defense couldn't be stacked against him. So it made sense. I was going to use him basically as a blocking back, kind of like again the St. Paul philosophy of using Tim Pierce and Kimball to lead through and be a lead blocker. And so in practice, because he was so slow off the ball, every single snap I would stand behind him, literally put my foot on his butt, and then when the ball was snapped, I would kick him, get him off the ball quicker. I would do that every single play for like 2 weeks to make sure that he got off the ball faster. Well, he was off the ball so fast that he kind of got some offsides penalties from illegal motion penalties for it, but he was much quicker off the ball after that.
Yeah. And then, so talk about the next 4 years playing with your son. Did you guys do well? Have some undefeated seasons? Go to the
It
playoffs?
was difficult in a lot of ways because I was a lot tougher on him.
Yeah.
But Brent was very mature in his attitude. He come to his dad. If you're tougher on me, that's going to make me a better player.
Yeah.
So he was okay with that.
Yeah.
So it was really a lot of fun coaching him. It really
Yeah.
was. And there was some issues with parents thinking that he was being treated favorably and all of that. Some typical parents who were upset that their son wasn't playing more, or all of those kinds of issues with parents. But overall, Brent earned everything he got, and he was all state football, and he was he's the only 16 letter winner that Morris has ever had. He lettered in 4 sports all 4 years.
Well, that says a lot about him because at Owasso High School, I think Brad Van Pelt was probably the only All-State football player. So that says an awful lot about him. So let's move on to after Morris. Then was it Perry next or Chesaning?
Perry, actually.
So talk about your experience at Perry real quick, and then we'll do Chesaning, and then we'll do Corona.
Oh, Perry, it was strange. I was never the head football coach. I was hired, but then there was some political crap that went on between our Morris's superintendent and the superintendent at Perry, and so they they found a loophole and unhired me before the season even started. And I had resigned my position at Weberville. I was coaching at Weberville at the time, and as an assistant, and so I lost that position. And so it was a quagmire for a couple of years, and uh,
And then Chesaning was that when what was that next?
uh, yeah, Chesney was a 1 year deal.
And then Corona.
Coached with
And Corona
Jason
was
Gray.
after
Jason Gray was a kid that played for me at Owasso. I liked him a lot, helped him a lot, doing some things, and he was also a wrestler, and so we got along great. And I went to Chesaning. I loved this school, and I sat and watched the game, and the JV player sat behind me during the varsity game, and they were so positive and so great. The kids at Chesaning were some of the best kids I've ever coached. And it was around, and it was that atmosphere that convinced me to travel that far to coach with Jason. And Jason was a young coach and made a lot of mistakes, and it was not a good experience.
yeah.
I ended up resigning really early into the season because I couldn't work with him because he had hired his ex football his ex coach that I didn't get along with, and I brought the defense that I wanted to use, and Jason was never really on board with it. And when he brought in this other coach, I won't mention his name, but um, he didn't like it either. And so Jason came to me and said the day before the scrimmage, like a week before the first game, and said you either run a 4-3 defense or resign. And so I ended up resigning because he says I told him, he says, you have people on your staff that know a 4-3 defense way better than I do. They should coach it if that's what you want. And so, that wasn't a great experience, but the kids were amazing. I loved the kids there.
Well, one thing that we as players never think about is the politics of school boards, of athletic directors, of parents, of teachers, of all of these intricacies behind the scenes. So I want to ask you, what was your least favorite thing about coaching? And then what was your most favorite thing about coaching?
The least favorite thing was really the politics, like you said, even more so than parents that were difficult to deal with. I felt, again, Don Moore, go back to Don Moore, he really taught me how to deal with parents and to how to how to how to talk to them and not let parents get under my skin. And that's really all Don Moore's influence on my coaching philosophy. But the politics, like you said, like I was hired, for instance, as the varsity baseball coach at Owasso, and was really ready to take that on. Was hired, we got the letter of approval, all of that, and then 2 days later was told I was not the head baseball coach because a teacher stepped up and wanted the job, and the school board unhired me and hired the teacher because of the teacher was threatening to go to the school board or the union and threaten that. So I was hired and unhired twice, and once at Perry and once at Owasso. And that's very difficult to deal with when I knew that I was more qualified and had some real goals for those programs and thought I could really help turn them around. They were both those programs were in dire straits at the time, and I felt that my philosophy would help turn those programs around and we could be successful. So
It's
the politics was the worst part.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that they always want to hire a teacher to coach the sports when many times the teacher is not qualified, but yet there's other outside coaches that are way more qualified. So what did you like most about coaching over all of those years? What did
Well,
that
every
do?
sport was different. I liked the things I liked about football were different than what I liked about wrestling and baseball. Baseball was a relaxed kind of a thing, and I just really enjoyed it. It was just I never took baseball real seriously because if you were serious about coaching baseball and had that serious mentality, I think it hindered the players' ability to play. They weren't relaxed. They would be too much pressure. And my job as a baseball coach was to take the pressure off, let
Yeah,
them relax, let them go out and have fun. So it was a fun sport to coach because it had to be fun for them to be successful. At least that was my philosophy.
yeah.
Wrestling, the emotional of wrestling. Wrestling was an amazing sport and probably shed more tears with wrestling than any other sport because of the emotional involvement that you have with wrestlers.
Mm,
And the one-on-one thing on the mat and what's at stake for a wrestler to be out there by himself on that mat in front of people and doing their best to be successful. That's a tremendous amount of pressure and a tremendous amount of courage that it takes to wrestle because you're out there by yourself. You can't hide in an offensive line or you can't hide amongst 10 other players like you can in football. And so the emotional connection I had with wrestlers was amazing and very important to me and I really loved that about the sport. Football was the technical part of it. I mean, I got beat once early in my football career because I was totally outcoached. And I go, that ain't going to happen again. And
mm.
so, I worked my ass off to learn football and to be a better football coach and to surround myself with better people and better coaches and to have a good staff and have a staff that was intelligent enough to do the work and coach and prepare and do that. It takes a lot of preparation to coach football and a lot of organization and a lot of coming together and syncing everything together and the challenge of being a good football coach is harder in football and also because it's a sport that people look at. It's a sport
Yeah.
that brings out the most people and your school is your football program is the apex of the sports program.
Wow.
And so to do that and to do it well, it took a lot of work. So I enjoyed the work that it took and the satisfaction of being accomplished at doing it, but never felt my job was really finished. I mean, I could always be a better football coach.
What's your best advice for others entering the coaching industry or that maybe they've been in coaching for a while and they haven't achieved the success they want? So, what advice do you have for others?
Be yourself, be organized, have a system in place, create a philosophy, and write it down. Make sure that all the players, all the parents are aware of your philosophy and stick to it. That's the
Mm,
other thing. Don't waver. I mean, like I said, I was a terrible assistant coach because the head coaches, several of the coaches that I coached under were younger coaches that would waver on a lot of things and they would say one thing and then they would do something different. And that just drove me insane as an assistant coach. It was really difficult to coach with them and to help them do that because of that wavering and they would give in to parents and other things and so that don't do. I mean, be yourself. I mean, Don Moore again. Go back to Don Moore on my beginnings. Um, he was a tough nosed guy and he wouldn't take any crap from anybody. And that's what he taught me to be as well. And so to figure out a philosophy, believe in the philosophy, and stick to the philosophy.
Mm. What life lessons do you want or did you want to impart on your student athletes that they could
Be a
use
better
for
person.
life? One more time?
To be a better person. To
Mm.
walk away from the sport being a better person. A better Christian, if that was what their belief system was, just a better person, and to be sportsmanship was a huge thing for me, and before every game, I would go out and meet the officials like you do as a head coach, and I would explain to the officials if any of my players, anybody, says anything negative on the football field, gives any kind of trash talk at all, you let me know and I'll pull them out of the game. I don't put up with that. I don't want any of that. And I meant it and did several times. And
Mm.
uh and I got a lot of notes, not a lot, several. My athletic director got several letters from officials talking about how well our team was as far as their sportsmanship. I remember
Mm.
getting beat 51-0 against Olivet one game, and that was the time that the officials said they couldn't believe how good our kids acted, getting thumped like that.
Wow. Wow. What uh what advice do you have for your players that are transitioning out of football, out of wrestling, out of baseball? My dad always told me that he said, Patrick, the problem with you is skateboarding and football. Those are young men's sports. You need to play golf and tennis because those are old men's sports. And I thought that was good advice, and I didn't take that advice. So, what advice do you have for student athletes that are no longer able to play football competitively, no longer able to wrestle?
Apply the lessons you learn from the sport into your life, into your
Mm,
family, into your work ethic, into
mm,
your work. I mean, it's all about teamwork and those kinds of things, and take those values. And one of the sayings that I would always use is create great memories, and so that you have something to talk about with your friends, in years to come, and just enjoy the time and create great memories, and take the work ethic that you learned with you.
mm, mm. So, obviously, all of us players that have played for you, in my case, uh, two sports in like 4, 5, 6, 7 years I played for you. We learned all kinds of things from you that have impacted our life for a lifetime. What have you learned from your players?
Oh, I learned way more from my players than any other source of education that there is. I mean, the feedback. I mean, that's an important part of coaching is listening to your players, and listening to not just their words, but how they act, and what they're doing, and help them get to where you want them to get to, not by belittling them or yelling at them or demanding, but by partnering with them, and and that we're all in this together. That's the key part of it. I mean, it was never my team. It was never my program. It was our program. And each of the players belonged to that. And each of the players had responsibilities and and had input. And we had a system set up through our captains and whatever, that if anybody had a bitch about anything, that they had a way to express that and to come to me and talk about it. And so everybody had a voice, and they knew that. They knew that I was personable. And the whole thing, though, titles. I think titles sometimes get in the way. If I insisted to be called something, that's putting a wall between me and them, and I didn't want that. I wanted things to be as personable as possible, and that they felt comfortable coming to me with their problems. And I had all kinds of problems. I mean, all kinds of players that came to me with their personal problems, and things as weird as high school players being afraid that they might have gotten their girlfriend pregnant. Those kinds of issues that they would come to me and talk to me about, and obviously be very emotionally upset about those kinds of situations, or situations they had with parents, or any of those kinds of stuff. They felt comfortable coming to me and talking to me about that. As far as playing, as far as the rules that they had to abide to be eligible to play, whether it be their grades or whether it be not drinking or not, not doing all of that. I mean, I had people that would inform me that, Coach, there's a party over in this field behind this house on Saturday. I just want you to be aware of that. And so I would get the word out that I was aware of that. And the party didn't happen. So it was those kinds of influences that helped me become a better coach, because they felt comfortable coming to me with those kinds of stuff. I had
Yeah.
another parent who put on a party after every game, but it was a party with soda pop and chips and those kinds of stuff, and they created an avenue or a place for them to go instead of going out drinking like a lot of programs, players did in other football programs. We didn't have that,
Yeah.
so that was
So,
important.
so now you've retired. One way or another, we're going to get this book out at some point, and this interview is certainly helping with all this amazing wisdom. There's lots that I've learned from you that I didn't know, and I'm so grateful for that. So I want to ask, how is retirement coming along? How are you spending your time? Also, you had some health challenges recently, and feel free to share whatever you'd like to share about that.
Well, yeah, my health problems are that it's, like at this point, my health problems, I look at it as there are people going through things way worse than what I'm going through. So it's not an issue that I want to do cartwheels about or create a pity party. I'm not into that at all, and don't want that. But yeah, I've been diagnosed recently with cancer, and had a cancer tumor removed from my bladder, and there's some things that are going on in the future that will help guarantee that I become cancer free, through that. So there's some health challenges ahead of me that I have to do. I have also, because of my diabetes, I'm diabetic. I have stage 4 kidney failure, and so that kind of gets in the way of a lot of the health situations. So there's some things, but I've lived a good life, and I'm not complaining about it. I mean, I went through all kinds of very painful ordeals, with my losing my eye and other things that I've fought through. So this is just that, and just another day in the life. So I'm not. My philosophy is taking these kinds of issues a day at a time, and not be too worked up about it.
Yeah, you're the first person I ever known that was interested in NASCAR and in mechanics and cars and fixing cars. So, have you had opportunity to go to a few NASCAR events over the years, and what has that meant to you in your retirement
Well,
years?
the clash was last weekend, and my favorite driver went from last place to second place. Ryan Blaney. And again, he's a class act, and that's what I like about him, is he's a class act. He's not an arrogant guy that a lot of the drivers are. So yeah, I follow him because he's a very humble guy, and a third or fourth generation driver. And so yeah, I really enjoy NASCAR. When I was young, that was my go-to job. I wanted to be a crew chief. I wanted to be involved in racing. My dad had a race car when I was young, and I overhauled my first engine when I was 14 years old,
Wow.
totally by myself. So I was very mechanically inclined because my dad was, and so that was racing was my first love. But it's an extremely expensive sport, and I remember my dad having a race car, and he was so caught up in it that the radiator in the race car got broken, and they had just bought a brand new 59 Ford car sitting in the parking lot. It wasn't more than a few months old. And my dad went out and took the radiator out of it and put it in the race car. So my mom wasn't real happy, but that was how caught up and contagious that racing was in the family at that young age. And um so yeah,
Was
that was, but it takes a lot of money to get involved in racing. I never
was
wanted to
that
be a
out? Was
driver.
that out at the Wasco Speedway? Is that where he raced?
Yeah, it was at the Wells Speedway.
Wow, very good. Well, we're coming to the end of this interview, and I could spend hours and hours sharing and speaking and listening and learning from you. Um, I can't you have been Rob Van Pelt's been a big impact in my life. Of course, my father, my family, but other than my dad, you've been the biggest mentor in my life, and I just want to gratefully thank you because you have no idea, how much that means to me.
I'm
Uh,
very humbled by that. I'm very humbled by a lot of stories, even some kids that I've coached that I really didn't think I had that big of an influence on them, and they've come back and messaged me and told me what a big influence I was on them. It's very
yeah,
humbling.
wow. And by the way, anybody listening, before I forget to do this, write down my phone number 206 310 1200. 206 310 1200. Look me up on Facebook, send me a text. I want to keep in touch with you. I want to interview you guys. I want to learn more about your experience with Coach Bill so that we can include that in the book. So please reach out to me one way or another, and we'll get your feedback and input in the book as well.
I know there are a lot of guys that they could be on this call, but couldn't because of the work and other things. But I'm giving them that same message to contact you and to share those things.
Yeah, and we're recording this entire interview, and we're going to record the Q&A afterwards. And so we're going to capture all of this on recording, and then they'll be able to listen as well in the weeks and months ahead. Um, I want to ask you this, maybe the most important question. Might bring a tear to my eye, maybe a lump in your throat. And you said this is going to be very difficult for you to answer, but what is the legacy of Bill MacCarrick that you want to be known for?
To put it in a simple term, making a difference. I want to share one story that just came to mind. I had a young man at Morris, um, being raised by a single mom. Um, I don't know if I should mention his name. I will. His name is Bill Tribbley. He was a kid that was my what was when he was too young to play. He was a manager for me. I became a surrogate dad to him. I really did, and he was an amazing young man. And he played for me, and I was coaching baseball, and he needed a catcher, and I didn't have one, and I saw him walking on the hallway, and I said, Tribbley, you're my catcher. He says, okay, coach, whatever you said. Never caught in his life, and he it was like that. But it was a neat experience. But he went on as a senior. His mom came to me in tears and said that Bill wants to enlist in the Marines. And this was during the Iraq War and Afghanistan War. And his mom wanted me to talk him out of it. And I said, I'll talk to him. And I brought him in, asked him why he wanted to join the Marines. And he says, Coach, of all of the places I went to all of them, Army, Navy, Air Force. The Marines were the only one that asked me what I could do for them. They all were telling me, all the rest of them told me what they could do for me, but none of them were put themselves in a position where they expected me to do something for them. And the Marines did that. And I wanted to become a Marine. And he became a Marine and saw battle. It was a uh, platoon leader. I'm not sure what his rank was, but he talked about a situation where the I don't know if it was I think it was Afghanistan, and they had shot two Marines, and the code of engagement changed after that, and it became very lax. And they went out after the snipers that did that, and they found the sniper, and they flushed him out, and he went and he kind of got buried in a flock of sheep and a shepherd, and they kind of lost track of him a little bit. And the rules of engagement had was that he was to shoot this shepherd that was tending these sheep. And this, I kind of get emotional telling it, but um, he talked about he always talked to his friends in the military about expectations and how some of them were doing steroids and all of that, and how Bill would tell them that if my coach had caught me doing those things, he would have kicked my ass. And so, all of that. So he came to the point where he pulled up his gun to shoot this guy, and he said it came to my mind, what would my coach have me do? And with that, he couldn't pull the trigger.
And this was the shepherd that was protecting the
Yeah,
sniper.
protecting
So not even the
the,
shepherd had
the
no
sniper.
gun. Yeah.
It was protecting the sniper. And he said, I couldn't do it. And so that was all in part of me asking him about what kind of influence did I have on his life. And obviously this is the guy that you have to talk to. I know he's not on, but um, that was very emotional. The fact that I,
You saved a
in that
life.
weird kind of indirect way, save someone's life.
Yeah. That's making a difference.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, the last question that we ask, because this is called the Patrick and Mary Unstoppable Author Interview Series, is to define the word unstoppable. But before we do that, I want to give you an opportunity. Any last bits of wisdom, nuggets, information, any last bits of advice, anything else you want to share, anything that we missed that you want to cover, any other insights that you want to go over?
Well, obviously, with the number of young men that I've interacted with in my coaching career, I
And
could
we're
go
probably
on for
talking
hours
in
and
the
hours.
thousands of men,
Yeah.
right?
I could go on for hours and hours about different guys that I've coached that that I impacted. I know that I impacted, but more importantly to me, they impacted me um, in those relationships and those memories. I mean, I often, when I talk to people, um, thank them for the memories, because that was all, everything that was important to me was the memories that we created together. And so it's that. So I think I lost track of the question, but um, yeah. So
Yeah,
it's
anything you
it's
want to
those
share?
moments.
Any closing comments? Anything you want to share about anything?
Well, I'm very fortunate that God put me on this earth to do this, and I truly believe that's what it was. When I was in high school, when I played football, I had no idea, no thought of ever being a coach. Furthest thing from my mind. And for all of that to manifest in the way that it did and to happen the way that it did, it was a God divined thing to have happened. Never would I believe that a shy, quiet kid that used to stutter a lot, that I could stand up in front of a group of young men and talk to them and coach them and help them understand who they were. never would I believed I could do that. And it all came to fruition through that. And so I was put on this earth to do that. And I'm very grateful to have that opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for all the great memories that you created for all of us student athletes that played for you. When I look back at my childhood, you and the sports, the baseball, the football, it was the best part of my childhood. And I want to thank you for that because you indeed created some great memories for so many of us.
Well, you were one of the young men that started it, Pat. I mean, it was in my relationship with you helped create the pathways for me to do that with many others. So I certainly owe you a lot as well.
I remember you said a couple of times I got hurt. I remember one time in football I scraped up my arm and you just kept taping it. And I didn't think anything of it because you taped it, I was going to be fine. But you taught me that, sooner or later you got to realize that you got to play hurt because anybody who's everybody and anybody has had to play hurt in some way or shape or form in their life if they were to achieve success. And so I think that you taught us how to play through the bumps and the bruises. And certainly that stuck with me for a lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, the name of the book was going to be Are You Hurt or Are You Injured?
Okay, tell us the difference. I'm glad you
Yeah,
brought that up. I
yeah,
almost missed it.
exactly.
What is the difference between being hurt or being injured?
Well, if you're laying on the ground and everything's hurting, but you can move it and the joints still work, you're probably only hurt. So that was kind of the definition.
And if you're injured, what does that mean? That you can't play?
Yeah, injured means there's a bone sticking out someplace or something was pretty, apparent that you probably should maybe go to the hospital and get things fixed.
A broken neck, a broken back, your
Yeah,
knee
those
broken
those
out,
those
knee
minor things like
dislocated.
that. Like
Otherwise,
like
you're
Coach Weeks used to say, it's a long ways from your heart. You're fine. That was his line. If you were hurt as well, it's a long ways from your heart. I think you're gonna live.
yeah. Oh my goodness. Okay, how do you define the word unstoppable?
To be unstoppable, you have to prepare. It's all about preparation. It's all about a work ethic. It's all about those kinds of things have to be put in place. If those things are in place, then it's easy to become unstoppable. But you have to do the work first.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. All right, we're going to take some questions from our former players first. But before we do, let's give Bill MacCarrick, Coach Bill, a big hand. Thank you so much. This was amazing,
I hope it
incredible.
was entertaining.
It was very entertaining. Okay, we're going to go to your former players first. Tell us Bill MacCarrick's story, any words of gratitude that you want to share. Let's go to Dave Beauchamp first. And then we'll go to Shane Kovich. And then Matt
All right.
Hebeke.
Right. It's good to see a lot of these names and I guess meet new people. And Coach, I think it was 2 years ago when we were in Hawaii together for Pat's wedding, and it was a treat catching up with you then. And I wrote down a bunch of stuff, but that was coming back to me during these questions. And if I had to pick one thing out of here that I remember about our undefeated season was I heard horror stories from my older brother, the previous coach. There was, you were seventh and eighth graders. So Tim Pierce and some of those guys obviously were eighth graders. Patrick and I were seventh. Matt Hebekaiser was an eighth grader. So Matt would probably remember this as a seventh grader that they waited for like a rainy, nasty day, and eighth graders got to initiate the seventh graders, which basically mean they just hazed us. And we didn't have to do that because you said that, we're a team and this is about meritocracy. So you want to have your initiation. Here's how it's going to work. And I remember this recently. We did the Oklahoma drill, which I don't think they even really do anymore. But it was like you want to take out. Of course, my older brother was an eighth grader, so he picked me, and we had to lay on our backs and blew the whistle. We got up and we ran at each other, and it was a collision. And hopefully for Brian, he felt like he got the better of me. But you didn't, I remember Mark Fitzgerald wanted a piece of Paul Druntel, and Paul was a tough kid. And normally, Mark would have been able to haze him a little bit. I love Mark Fitzgerald, but when they had to do the Oklahoma drill and lay on their back, Paul definitely got the better of him that day. And my daughters are juniors in high school, so they had their powder puff game, and it's kind of orchestrated for the seniors to beat the juniors, and the juniors were pissed. One of the girls who I coached in soccer, and her dad's a good friend. He's born and raised I moved to Boston in the late 90s, and Irish Catholic family, and he's got 6 kids, and his daughter June was pissed that they lost to the seniors because they gave them like an extra whole series of plays after the game was over. But they laid on their, the next day they had this real powder puff game where I think the kids get together, and there's probably alcohol and stuff like that involved. But this 8th grade girl, who was a pretty bigger girl, she picked out June, and I'll send you the video because they got on their backs, and June was a tough, plays hockey and does other sports, and they got on their back, and this girl came at her. They ran at each other, and no pads on, and June took her out. And I saw her at a basketball game Friday night. I said, I want a piece of you in the Oklahoma drill. But that's one thing that stood out, is that you made that into a team. And I think the 8th graders definitely appreciated that too, is that, you know what, we are a team, and that's why we went undefeated, because that culture you created. This is just one example of what that meant, and it's something that there's a lot of things that stuck at me. But if I were to pick out one, it was how you got rid of the hazing and just put in an Oklahoma drill to replace that leveled the playing field for that team. So
Yeah, the culture at St. Paul's was terrible before I got there, and it was a trickle down from when St. Paul's had a high school program, and there was a lot of swearing and cussing and things like that were part of that culture, and everybody there thought that's what football was about, and I didn't believe that, and changed that. It was something that I thought was appalling, and that especially junior high age kids should not be exposed to any of that, and so that I ended that culture pretty quickly, and I wouldn't have been able to coach without it.
Yeah.
So it was great catching up. Thank you. I know that you coached all of me and all 4 of the boys in our family, Brian and and I think Mark you had in football and baseball, and then Kevin, who was like, as my dad describes him, as product of a snowstorm, because he was so much younger than us that anyone else can get that joke.
You were a great family to coach. It was fun. I enjoyed you
Yeah.
and your dad and even your mom when she was there. So it was yeah, you guys were.
It was a rite of passage. I know when Kevin finally got a chance to he played baseball for you. It was like, to play for Coach Bill was something that he's not part of a lot of our childhood stories after our mother passed away, but he has Coach Bill stories just like the rest of us. So thank you for that, and I'll let Pat pass it over to our buddy Shane. Good to see you, Shane.
Okay, 1 second before we get to Shane. Owner on here, I think that's Jeff, your former coach. Jeff wants to say a few words before he's got to go, and then we'll go to Shane. Is that Jeff Hemsworth? Is he still on, or
no? Don Hemsworth.
Yeah, is he still with us? I think owner says he's got to go in a few moments. Go ahead and unmute. There you go. Go ahead.
I'm here. So first of all, just to show you, this is the kind of thing Bill would teach me and emphasize. I'm taking an 88-year-old lady in about 10 minutes to the casino for a birthday party. And that's the thing Bill would do. Respect your elders and enjoy your relationship with them. But fun stories about Bill. Real quick, we were coaching our first year at Morris. And we had an incident where a player who had a lot of control the previous year would not pick up or hold a dummy for practicing. He was a senior, and Bill comes over and he goes, no, I'm not going to do it. And Bill's like, why not? He goes, I just don't do that. So Bill, being the good coach he is, he says, well, you understand, if you don't hold this dummy, you're going to have to leave practice. And the kid goes, no, I'm not going to do it. So then Bill goes, now you understand I have to kick you out. And the kids, no, I'm not doing it. So Bill says, you're out of practice and you're gonna, you'll come back the next day. So gave a kid a lot of options, made the choice. So then the person, the player, ends up throwing off all his equipment and walks to the locker room. And I'm sitting there looking for I'm brand new coach in there too. And right away I go, well, that's like a trail of tears leaving to that locker room. But anyhow, so the player never came back. And that set the example, though, to culture that he wanted on that team. And the ironic thing is I came up to Bill and I go, I didn't know Bill Harley. I just go, you handle that real well, and I'm a witness if you need one. So sure enough, about a week later, the assistant varsity coach got a teaching job somewhere else. Bill comes up to me and goes, I want you as my assistant. And the rest is history. We were there for 3 great years and a lot of fun. And they even wrote an article in the Lansing State Journal, Bill. Do you remember that? About that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And but that really did set the culture, and the kids knew this guy was serious. He was
So
consistent.
this player too was supposedly our best player.
Yep, best player in team. Yep. And he was, but we're going to treat everyone the same, and this is what we want. And I think the respect for the kids, he earned it that moment. And but there were a lot of fun moments too. We had not beaten Weberville in many years, and we finally beat them. And on the way home, we stopped the bus, and Bill, having the one eye, has trouble at night, which I find when I used to drive with him. I'm like, dear, 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 and you never see him. But anyways, he came up and he slapped the Morris M on the Weberville site on the way out of town, and the whole bus just went nuts. And it was just an enlightening moment. That's again the reason why kids and students love Bill. And those are 2 short, quick stories, and there's many more.
Right.
My time there, I always used to tell Bill, it was like sometimes initially at first it was us against the world. A couple outsiders came in and through Bill's leadership, we set the culture. And
To add to that story, that we on our way to Weberville, we stopped at a stop sign, and in front of us was the it was a T in the road. So there was the yellow sign with the double arrow, and on that arrow was a Weberville helmet sticker. And I go to myself, that's got to come off there. So after we won the game, we stopped and we took that Weberville thing off and put our Morris M on there, and it became a tradition that I would pick out the outstanding player of that game, and I would take their M off their helmet and stick it on that sign, and then they would play the rest of the season with just one M on their side to indicate that they were that outstanding player for our arch rival Weberville. So that's how that
And this
came
is
about.
just for clarification. This was in their city, so you were leaving an emblem of the sticker in their city on their sign. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
yeah.
And in fact, we even got to the point where there was a couple of players that played outstanding, so I took off several M's. So I snuck into Weberville and actually stuck it on they have a bulletin board sign in front of the school, and I stuck our M on their bulletin board sign. So
I love it. We should have left we should have left this St. Paul logo at St.
yeah,
Gerard. We should have done
right.
that.
We should have.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to Shane. Go ahead, Shane, and then we'll go to Matt Hebekaiser. You got to unmute. You got to hit the unmute button.
Okay. Hey, how's everybody doing?
Good, good.
Good.
Hi, Shane.
Hey, coach. So one story that I remember, and Little Greens, right? By the way, I think we had some undefeated teams on the Little Greens too. So there was a moment I played defensive line, right? And I think it was one of the Pecos boys. I can't remember, Rich or Greg. It was probably Rich. But he was kind of handling me one day in practice, and he was pushing me around and moving me around, doing whatever he wanted with me. And there was a moment where you pulled me aside and you said, "Hey, do I need to stick my foot up your butt? Like, you need to get going here." what's going on. And it literally, I remember that moment that I did not want to disappoint my coach. I was getting beat. And by the way, it wasn't just Coach Moore and Coach MacCarrick. It was you had a third coach out there too, and that was Patrick for sure. Pat was a great leader in the linebacker position, and I'll never forget that. So, but anyway, after that moment, Pecos didn't have a very good day after that happened. I can tell you that, because I was in the backfield and I was doing what he needed to do. But what that taught me was, and kind of what Pat opened up with, was the fact that resiliency, right? So you get challenged, you get knocked down, you got to pick yourself back up, and you got to go find a way to get after it time and time again. And I've never forgotten that as I've grown older, as I have life lessons, whether it's in business or with my kids or with my family. Those are all things that I look back on that moment and go, hey, we got to get it going. So I appreciate you for that, Coach. And Pat, thank you for doing this. It's awesome.
Yeah, very good. Excellent.
Thank you, Shane.
Thank you.
Very good. And by the way, Shane, you were always one of the most humorous guys on our team. You made everybody laugh. I mean, look at that smile. How can you not just like love that smile? You were our.
And he had the bluest eyes too. I remember that. His eyes were just amazing.
Everybody loves Shane.
Thanks,
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah. And Shane, we got to keep in touch. I'd love to chat with you soon.
I know. Absolutely.
All right, let's go to Matt Hebekaiser. Matt was, I think, offensive tackle, offensive guard on that 81 St. Paul Blue FC team. So go ahead, unmute Matt and share your comments, thoughts, or stories. And then we'll go to Eric and then Brent. Can you hear us, Matt? You got to unmute. I don't know if you can hear us.
I think I got it.
Go ahead.
Well, there's so many memories that have just been brought back. I mean, vividly remembering Kennedy's injury, Sean's broken arm. And you know, it's great to see everybody. Bill, I guess I still look back and think that was some of the best days of my junior high years, or even St. Paul years, was playing football and being pushed more than you wanted to be pushed. Carmody and I were always the slowest, the most rotund. I think we both still are, even though I do the roller coaster thing. But remember Pat stopping at Backsaws for the pizza, because I think he got the last piece and I didn't get any, and I was not happy about that. But there was a situation on the bus. Gene Davis was an assistant coach with you. And there was a situation on the bus one day coming home when we got into the whole your mom wears army boots and so on and so forth. And I made a comment about your sister's so ugly, and Gene got just beyond mad. We got back to the school, and Kimmel and I are the first ones in the locker room. And I punched one of the lockers and knocked the mesh out of it. But so for years and years, I just always, didn't get along with Gene. Well, fast forward to 2005, I meet this girl and we start dating, and I ask her, well, who's your dad? Gene Davis is now my father-in-law and one of the best people you could ever ask for. And I gave him the information to be on this, and he could not get on, but he says hi to everybody, and he's doing well. But Bill, thank you for what you did for us.
Well, Matt, did you recover from your injury?
Which one?
When you stabbed yourself with a pencil.
Oh, that one? Yes.
You remember that?
I had several since. Tom Morgan did that.
I don't know why I remember that, but I do.
Yeah, I still have the lead mark in my arm, but yeah, Tom Morgan grabbed my arm with a pencil in his hand, and that was a nice.
I thought you did it.
No, Tom grabbed my arm. I was cutting through a line, and he thought I was just cutting into the line, but he had a sharp number 2 pencil, and it jabbed me. But
yeah, I don't know why that sticks out, but it does.
Matt, we were talking the other day in prep for this call, and you mentioned and reminded us of the Saturday night drill. And that's when we would do the calisthenics and the stretches, and we'd get on our stomach, and then we'd go back like this and stretch out our back. And maybe it was Gene Davis who started calling that the Saturday night drill. And all of us at 12 years old that had never kissed a girl before, per Larry Beauchamp would always say that, we had no idea what the Saturday night drill was. But maybe some of the 8th graders knew that, and you guys were laughing and cracking up. But maybe that was Gene Davis or
I don't
Phil.
think I knew what it was in 8th grade, but and I can't foresee Gene the way he is now. He is a very, very religious guy, and one of the most wholesome people you will ever meet.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Okay, Eric, you were a wrestling student athlete of Bill's. Go ahead and share any stories of gratitude you have.
Absolutely. It's great to be on here with you, Coach. I appreciate you so much. As a young man, I was raised by a single mom, didn't have a father figure in the home. You guys mentioned kicks. I tried that for a little bit, kids in contact sports, but I was terrible at it. I was too big. I was fat. I was out of shape, and so when I get into junior high as a 7th grader, I'm told about wrestling, and all I knew about wrestling was what I saw on TV, WWF and steel chairs, and I didn't want any part of it. But went down into the dungeon there at the junior high, and met Coach Bill, and he had me jumping. Man, we jumped forever. That's like all we'd ever do is we just jumped. And you're in the dungeon. You swear there's bodies that are hidden around in there.
I remember first practice. We had so many guys out for wrestling that I had to kind of narrow things down. So the first thing I said, and I said it very nonchalantly, okay, we're going to start off with 300 jumping jacks.
Yeah.
And they looked at me and their mouths opened up and I, like it was, I looked at it like it was like doing 5 push-ups. So 300 jumping jacks.
Yeah, tons, just forever. And then so I wanted to tell this story. Coach Bill, I don't even know if you really know this, but so as a 7th grader, I was wrestling heavy because Aaron Mead, who was an 8th grader, he was at the weight class below me. So that would have been where I would have naturally been, but we didn't have a heavy, so they threw me up to heavy. And we were wrestling Davidson. And this is before they're the powerhouse they are now, but still, you're wrestling Davidson. I go out on the mat, my first match ever. And we're wrestling around, and the guy was bigger than me. And I get down on my back, and his belly is on my face. And I literally cannot breathe. And I'm screaming, "Uncle, I quit. I give up," whatever I got to say to make this all end, right? Well, it ends. And I'm like, whew, that was the worst experience of my life. Well, that was only the end of the first period. I thought the match was over. I thought they heard me say I quit and they put me out of my misery. That was just the first period. Well, now I'm angry, right? And I'm crying because I'm upset. And coach is like, take top, don't get under that guy again. Take top. And sure enough, off the whistle, I threw in a half and I just ran it, rolled the dude over and pinned him. And that was my first match ever. And I wanted to quit, but like I wasn't allowed to quit. I just had to keep going, and I ended up winning. And I'm so thankful, Coach. Thank you on behalf of all the players that didn't get a chance to quit, on behalf of all the players that would have thrown in the towel but weren't allowed to, and were forced to stretch their boundaries. I thank you for that, Coach. I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
You were an amazing guy. I mean, you had a great attitude and always was very positive and always worked hard. And I always appreciated that. I mean, the dungeon was an environment that, unless you experienced it, you had no idea what it was like.
Yeah.
So,
and this was at Owasso Junior High School. Is that where this was?
Yeah, Owasso Junior High. This was before we had our own colors. We were purple and white or whatever.
The dungeon was a sub basement that was underneath the swimming pool.
Yeah.
And the floor would get wet all the time because this pool would overflow, and the overflow would come down into the basement. So the mats were kind of sometimes floating on top of the water that we would wrestle on.
There were pillars in the room.
And it would be splashing up between the seams. Yep. And then there's 2 big sump pumps that kept the water, that kept the river out of the sub basement, because we were lower than the level of the river. So you had these big sump pumps with these big steel things around it that you had to not fall into. Yeah, it was a cool environment. They actually condemned it later on. Could go down there.
It doesn't surprise me one bit.
I felt they should have condemned it way sooner.
Yeah, yeah, probably. It was scary an environment to step into, but man, I mean, men were forged in that environment, and it's because of you, Coach. So thank you.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, let's go to Brent McCormick. And by the way, Brent went off and played. It was a shot putter at Michigan State, full ride scholarship, Division One, obviously Big Ten. That's a pretty big achievement coming out of playing high school football and track. So Brent, what was it like playing for your father? Maybe any insights you can share with us that we wouldn't know that maybe you would. Obviously, you got to unmute. I think you're muted still. And then once we get done with Brent, we're going to go back to Dave Beauchamp. Dave, you got a bunch of stories. I'd love to hear another story that you've written down because I would love that. So let's go to Brent. No, you're unmuted. Go right ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I'm in the pickup line picking up my kid from school. So, so lots of things with my dad, right? Obviously, the hard work that he put in. So I got to see that behind the scenes things of him, and then his coaching and the late nights of him watching film all night long. His spending money that we didn't have, buying VCRs that could make record 2 tapes at one time, so that he can give tapes to coaches or give tapes to other players. He would always make those things out of his own pocket to pay for those things. He spent more money than he did made. He spent way more money than he actually made coaching. So he never obviously didn't do that for the money. Buying playbooks for the 3 reminder playbooks to give out to every kid. So him making and spending the time to do all those things was just crazy. So things that I've learned, obviously, just hard work, right? Preparation. I mean, he talked about preparation, and that's not messing around. The preparation that he put into getting ready for football season, and the amount of times that he read books about different things football wise, or hot plays and coming up with new plays, and him talking about how he would wake up in the middle of the night with a play that he created in his head, and he has to go and write it down. Right, middle of the night, he's sleeping, he dreamt about it, go write it down, and that would be a play that we put into black practice. Like so just the preparation that he put in and the visualization that he taught me. Lots of things that I've learned, obviously, going on to play college sports and doing that thing. Hard work, dedication, preparation was all things that I had to put in place. So
very good, excellent.
So
okay,
many stories about my dad that I have so many stories that I could probably go on. I had to jot down 6, 7, 8 of them here. So, but I want to put the record that I own the time lap record. So if there's any talk about the time lap record, it's me. I own that one. My dad,
that was done by accident, but kind of we didn't know what position he played, so he kind of went between one position and another. So he ended up running time lapse for both groups. So he set the record.
Very good. Very good. Well, Brent, thank you so much.
So I started off as a.
We're going to have to interview you some more for this book.
Thank you so much.
We're going to go back to Dave Beauchamp, then we're going to go to Helen Collar, and we'll finish up with Mary West. So Dave, go ahead. If you've got any other stories for us.
Yeah, there's one that when Shane was talking about the playing defensive line, I remember the year after the undefeated season, we came back, and obviously we didn't have some of the big guys, but Bill raised some money, and I remember we got new uniforms, and this was back in the early 80s, and my favorite as a Michigan fan, I loved Anthony Carter, so I had number 1 was my number, and Bill started me off the season. I think I was playing fullback, and I think I probably fumbled or did something, but it was quickly he replaced me with Paul Drentel or Backus or somebody, and I was pissed. And I remember like coming home from practice, and I was just not happy with Coach that I was going to be on the offensive line and carry the ball, and I just remembered, my dad, saying, listening to the story, and he's like, that's, almost like cool story. My dad was a former high school football coach before he had his four sons, and he said it's a great story. He goes, I'm not your coach though, right? And so this is kind of more of a statement, and it was like the Pat, you mentioned politics and stuff. I mean, coach, dealing with parents, and it's something that everyone like probably went through, where you weren't happy with something and you didn't like it, but like, is there anything that you did, or when you had to keep parents at bay that got a little bit, just wanted to get more involved in their kids' sporting experiences? Because I think that can cause a lot of issues with creating the culture you want as a team, if you're having parents, and it must have been tough as a 22-year-old to you're dealing with 13, 14, 15-year-olds who have parents that are 10, 15 years older than you. So it's more of a question for you than a statement, but I do remember that moment of having to go back, and of course I never was going to go talk to you and complain about something, so I just went, and I was like, you had me on defensive line after that, and I remember every time you gave the ball to the fullback in practice, I was like, I'm going to light that guy up, and it was Tell or Bakis. I was like, I don't know how hard I could hit, but I hit him as hard as I could, because I was upset that I wasn't the one carrying the football. So my question, coach, is more about dealing with parents and life lessons like that, for young people that are coaching.
Yeah, well, depends on the parent, I guess. I mean, I've had, obviously, in the number of years that I coached, I've had a lot of conflicts with parents and a lot of discussions. Some parents do it the right way. They call me up and ask me if we could meet, and I would meet them someplace, and we would talk about their kid, and I would be very honest about their talent level and all of that, and try and be as gentle about it as I can, but yet let them know that you're not at practice, you don't understand what goes on, and all of that, and so those issues. But and there's the other parent that on the sidelines will start screaming and hollering and put up a fit, and those I think I just mentally dismiss. I mean, I don't let it bother me. I don't let it think about it. I don't really. They're going to be what they are, and that's part of what I signed up for. So I didn't take them terribly seriously, but the ones that had real concerns about their kid and really were advocating for their kids, I had no problems talking to a parent and discussing what they need to do and what needs to change and those kinds of things. So it just depended. Every parent, every situation was different than each one. So you had to
Yeah.
kind of attack it one incident at a time.
And by the way, our 8th grade year, which would have been 1982, and Dave, I'm glad you brought that up because I forgot about all the new uniforms and the new jerseys and all of that. And I think they had stars on the sleeves because we were
Yeah.
undefeated. But we lost all of our horses. All the big guys, like Dave said, were gone. So now those boys that were 7th graders, we're still mostly boys as 8th graders. And I don't think we won a game. I think we went 0-6, and I don't think we had any touchdowns that year. But Bill, I think you forgot to order us team belts. Because I remember Joel Gonzalez had an interception, and Joel Gonzalez took the ball. He had the ball in one hand, had a pick six, and pants were falling down as he's running into the end zone, holding up his belt, getting in, and he scores maybe the only touchdown we scored all year. So I think
Yeah, I do remember that.
belt.
Yep.
Yeah. So
That was a good story.
yeah, that was I love those new uniforms. Okay, we got to finish up. Let's go to Helen. Your comments, thoughts, questions, and then Mary West. Okay, Helen, I
Did
think
I
you're.
get it? I got it.
Yeah.
Bill, thank you. I mean, and Patrick, thank you. For 26 years, I worked for the Juvenile Center in Seattle, Washington, as a detention officer for juveniles. And Bill, when I heard you say that this soldier was in about to kill someone and he thought of you, I had to remember when I worked for the juvenile system, and a young girl who was in juvenile had left and come back, and she said, Miss Helen, she said, "Man, we were finna kick that girl's ass." He said, but one of the girls said, "What would Miss Helen do?" She said, and I deflated me. I just had to walk away, and I saw your spiritual journey, your love and your care for those boys, young boys' lives, and that meant more to you. And the reward that you're having now to them to come back and say to you, I have hundreds of letters from girls and boys who's written me. It is it is a spiritual journey that you have taken
Yeah,
on,
it
and
sure
I'm
is.
so proud of you. When I first came on this, I'm not going to even lie. I said, shoot, I'll stay 15 minutes, but you inspired me. You made me feel that what I have done is so important, because what you have done, I sit here and see is so important. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you for that. What we all do is important. I mean, the youth of our country, of our world is our youth. I mean,
Yeah,
we have no future without them. So
no
we have to
future.
treat them right.
There you go.
Thank you, Helen. And we'll finish up with Mary, and then I got a couple parting thoughts. Go ahead, Mary.
Well, thank you, Bill. This was fantastic. I loved hearing all of the stories, and I can tell the love that all of your players have for you, and all the love that you have for all of your players. And I
Hmm.
love that you mentioned that you told your players before to be a better person and to create great memories. And I love that you tell your players that. So I am looking forward to the book that you and Patrick are putting together. So thank you so much for being on here today.
No, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, in conclusion, I want to read this quote again. Bill, you have been an earth angel for all of us. We didn't even see the component of faith that you were given us in all of the lessons. But again, Dr. Robert Brooks, one of the most important factors that contributes to the resilience in children is the presence of at least one person in their lives who believes in them. So again, Bill, thank you very much for your belief in us. And on behalf of Bill MacCarrick, myself, and everybody else, we challenge all of you to encourage all of us to become that person that believes into the children of today. So you guys write down my phone number. Please send me a text. I want to add you to my phone. We got a lot of work to do. Having recorded now 2 hours of this, I feel like we finally got enough material to get this darn book done. We've been kicking the tires on this for 10 years, so now I got to get this done. And I just want to thank you guys for being with us today. Bill, thank you from the bottom of my heart. You have no idea how much of an impact you've had on all of our lives. So any last comments that you have, Bill?
Oh, I thank everyone here for participating. It was so good to see you. It brings back a lot of memories, and that's what this is all about, is creating those memories, and this whole journey in talking to people. And there's a lot of them that they couldn't be on the call because of their work and different obligations they had, but they shared stories with me, and I'm going to pass those on to Pat. But some things that happened that I vaguely remember, and then them talking about it and how it impacted them brought it all back to me. So this is great to be able to relive those memories and to be a part of a time where I could make a difference
And you
and
have.
help people and do that. And obviously every one of you, every player that I've ever coached has made a difference in my life and has made me a better player. And there's not a night that I don't dream about coaching even yet. I haven't coached in quite a few years now, but it's still part of my DNA and who I am and what I want to do. I still, like Brent said, I still wake up nights and think of a play or think of something that has happened that I need to write down. And that's all a part of it.
Yeah.
So
Very
thank you,
good.
everyone.
You're most welcome. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. This has been amazing. This whole thing has been recorded. Within a week or two, we're going to have this out on Facebook, and we'll be able to share it with all those people that couldn't join. So thank you all, and God bless you all. We love you all. Bill, you're amazing. Let's give Bill MacCarrick a big hand.
Thank you all.
Take care, everybody.
Take care.
Take care.
Mahalo. Mahalo.